It wasn't a pretty win, but it was still a really good win for the now second seed Boston Celtics. I'll talk about it right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners. Baby.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. After I know it's jarring that I cut all of that intro down and you just got that end. If you're new to the show, if you've been listening for a while, it's a little different intro. The whole point is to get to get to the point of the show, which I am not doing right now, but I've heard that the intro is now jarring, so I'm explaining it. I've cut it down. We're going to start getting right to the point of the show. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening, watching our show on YouTube. The show's free. It's available everywhere. Bonus podcasts when they play on the weekends, which they're doing twice this weekend. So 2 bonus episodes coming up. If you're new to the show, I'm John Karalis, beat writer for Boston Sports Journal. I've been covering the Celtics in some form for about 20 years, doing this podcast for 10, and I've written a couple of books about the team as well. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase of tickets, maybe to a Celtics game. So go check that out. Today we're getting into a win. Technically it's a win. The Celtics had more points than the Chicago Bulls, and that's about the best thing I could say about this game. But actually this is a good win, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Later on we'll get into the whole seeding thing, and we'll get into Anfernee Simons and Payton Pritchard, who finally hit another buzzer beater, which he was very happy about. But let's just get right to it, because this was not the prettiest game in the world, which we expected. The Celtics coming off of the long road trip, like they said it, Anfernee Simons said it after the game. We knew that we were probably not going to play well. We all expected it. No one goes on a 5-game business trip, right? You go on a long business trip in 5 different cities over 10 days. You don't come back and go to work on Monday, rip raring to go, right? You come in, you're like, can I get a couple of days off, please? But you can't, because the schedule is relentless. So they have to come in here. They have to play this game. I will say right up front, I do think the Celtics were a little bit lucky in this game, because the Chicago Bulls absolutely sucked. I want to give the Celtics defense enough credit, but also I want to be fair and say that they gave up a lot of shots that the Bulls easily could have made. But the players who were out there for them, in general, were not as good as the players that are normally out there for them. They were missing a few guys. Kobe White came back off an injury. He was not himself at all. And so the Bulls were nowhere near themselves, and who they are in general is still kind of mediocre. So the Bulls were very complicit in this. The Bulls missed a ton of shots. The Celtics missed a ton of shots. It was a very ugly game. You can see the tweets from those of us in the media were like, okay, this game kind of sucks. The building, first of all, building was freezing cold. Second of all, the shooting was freezing cold. There was no reason for these fans to be any sort of energetic in this, and they weren't. I swear I was hearing individual conversations at one point during this game from the fans, because the Celtics gave them nothing. But this is why this is actually a good win, because through all of that, through all of the cold shooting, the Celtics still did defend. They still forced a lot of turnovers, and they were able to capitalize on those turnovers. They still went in there and grabbed the offensive rebounds. They did not shoot well. They came out in that typical first game back from a long road trip, kind of the legs weren't there. Like Jaylen Brown, his legs were not there. He followed up maybe the best regular season game he's ever had with one of the worst regular season games he's ever had, with 14 points, 6 of 24 shooting. But they still, throughout it all, were going and grabbing offensive rebounds. Jaylen had 3 offensive rebounds. Queta had 6. Ugo had 4. Garza had 3. They ended up with 20 offensive rebounds. They finished with 26 second chance points to the Bulls 12. So the Celtics still managed to wait. Am I frozen here? Okay, still going here. Sorry, technical glitch. The Celtics still managed to put forth the effort to still get to the boards, to still force the turnovers, and not only force the turnovers, because it wasn't like they forced 20 of them. They forced 13, but they still got 19 points off of those. and they were able to protect the ball themselves. They didn't give in to all the other little things that a team can give into. You come back, you're tired, you're not shooting well. It's very easy to just be like, ugh, I'm done with this. Schedule loss, whatever, who cares? We're just going to take the L and we're going to move on. And I think the Celtics of the past would have just gladly said that, because last year's team, championship level team, they don't care necessarily about games like this, because they just, whatever, who cares? Who cares if you lose this game on January 5th to the Chicago Bulls? No, it doesn't matter at all. But for the team that's out there now that's constantly trying to build an identity and build on the good things that they keep doing, and honestly trying to prove a lot of people wrong, or trying to prove a lot of early season predictions wrong, that team still needs to come in here with the effort. And credit to Joe Mazzulla, credit to Jaylen Brown, credit to the leadership on this team, credit to the guys that are fighting. They have enough guys on this team that are fighting for their positions that they aren't going to give in on most nights to those little kind of excuses. Okay, the shooting wasn't there, but they still could put in the effort to track down offensive rebounds. They were missing shots, but you could still come back and defend and get into a passing lane and force a turnover. All of those things were important, and it got the Celtics to a lead where they were shooting something like 20-something% from three, and Jaylen was at that point, I think, 1 of 10 or 1 of 11 from the field, and that stuff didn't matter because they were doing the other things, and they were preventing the Bulls from doing those things. So to me, this isn't a pretty win. This isn't something that's going to go down, when we go back through the course of the season and start picking out important games. This doesn't go down as any of that stuff, but it's still a nice win. It's still a really kind of good effort, a good way to just live up to that identity that they've been building. And again, that's a Joe thing. That's a team-wide thing. And I think that's important. The offensive rebounds were huge. The turnovers they forced were huge. Now, you got guys like Payton Pritchard, Anfernee Simons going off. They were able to buy themselves time. What the offensive rebounds and the turnovers did was buy themselves time until the shooters could get going. It's like Joe said it best after the game. It was like basically saying, I didn't like the way they looked, but I liked the way they played. They looked like they were tired, but I liked the way they were playing with that effort. And then you have a number of guys, Jaylen, Sam, Payton, Derek, Anfernee, any of these guys could get going if you just keep playing the right way. And then Pritchard comes in, and Next comes in, and that's where I'm going to talk about when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited-time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. From 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, it's appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Open up the FanDuel app. You'll get something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. And it's easy to check the weekly specials before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect. It's right before the games. It's right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to a Friday night basketball game without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a little basketball. It's a little action and a whole lot of Friday energy. And while you're there, when you're signing up and getting going, set your limit, set your budget so you can only bet what you can afford to lose in case you hit a cold streak like these guys who are shooting behind me in this game. In case you hit one of those cold streaks, they'll help you stop and gamble responsibly. So do that. Check out NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Quo. It's a new year, new systems, and it's time for us to take a look at the messier parts of how businesses run so we can figure out what better way to do these things. There has to be a better way, and that's Quo. Your communications are one of the quickest upgrades you can make, and Because with Quo, your team is reachable, organized, and communicating all in one place. You're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Quo allows your whole team to call and text from one shared business number, so there's nothing that gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. And because they're all on the same page, the customer is happy, because nothing upsets a customer more than when you're talking to two people in a company and they're not on the same page. It works right from the phone, right from your phone or a computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And they've got the smart AI tools that automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. Quo is the #1 rated phone business system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. So make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out the Locked On Everydayers Club, all right? You're already an everydayer. You're here with me Monday through Friday. You want a little something more? The Everydayers Club gives you access to ad-free audio on every major podcasting app. You get access to our Discord server, where you're going to have in-game chats. You have merchandise drops. It's all in the Everydayer Club. LockedOnCeltics.supercast.com. It's $5 a month, or if you want to pay for the whole year, it's $50. So you save yourself a couple of months there. Check it out. LockedOnCeltics.supercast.com. So this was a game where the Celtics were just constantly searching for their offense. Nothing was working. But eventually you would hope that with a team this, with this much offense, they can figure it out. So early on, Neemias Queta was keeping things alive with his rebounding. He had 6 offensive rebounds, 13 overall, 13 points, 13 rebounds for him. A nice game for Queta. By the way, side note, at the end of the game, this crazy power dribble drive from the right corner where he went up and it looked like he was going to try to dunk, and then he flipped it around and had a little finger roll. That was nice. Queta's pulling out these little moves here and there that aren't bad, but his offensive rebounding kind of kept things alive. And then it wasn't until the second quarter where Payton Pritchard finally hits the shot. He hits the shot that he's been looking for, and it was a buzzer beater from the left kind of hash mark. If you're watching on YouTube, way down there by the Bulls bench, he hits the shot. He'd been taking, so obviously we know the buzzer beaters, that's the Payton Pritchard thing. The one in the finals, he had 3 or 4 of them that were just crazy. And then it became a thing for Pritchard. Everybody's every time he gets the ball at the end of a quarter, it's oh, he loves these. And, he'd miss a few because they're tough to hit. You don't hit those very often. So he went on a little stretch where he just didn't hit them. This time he got it. He got to his spot. He hits the shot. He turns around. He just starts smirking and nodding. And I was okay, he feels something. I knew at that point, that's the level of confidence. I knew he was going to come out and start shooting well. At one point in the third quarter, I was just everybody get out of the way. Just let Pritchard shoot. He's the only guy that was hitting. Just let him keep shooting. He parlayed that make into 11 third quarter points. He kind of started the third quarter hot. And then at that point, he kind of passes the baton relay style to Anfernee Simons, who gets going. And Simons in the second half, from basically the second half of the third quarter through the fourth quarter, when we talk about Anfernee, that was absolute volcanic heater from Simons. He was 8 of 11 from 3 in the second half. He scored 27 points all in the second half. 27 points in the second. Jaylen scored 30 in the second half of the Clippers game. Simons was on that kind of just heater where if you can carry that over, that was a 54 point pace. Now he did it a lot differently. Obviously Jaylen was doing it, with all sorts of shots. Simons was just unconscious from 3, but that's the type of thing. when you have a guy like him, you just keep working, keep getting those good shots, which is why every time Joe Mazzulla was asked about something offensive, he was like, no, I go back to the offensive rebounding, the defense, and that's what allowed us to get to that point. He wouldn't let anybody just talk about the offense without saying it was the offensive rebound and the defense that got us to that point. And he's true. And it's true. And you know, Simons gets 2 offensive rebounds in this game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he had 14 coming in. So it's like 14% of his entire offensive rebounding, you know, workload from the season in this one game. So him getting the 2, and I think you can take a lot of positives from the Simons performance here because it tells you 2 things. Number one, him doing those little things, getting in there, getting the offensive rebounds. He talked about how in Portland, he was always the first guy back. Now he's spending time in the corners and he's crashing to the nail, which is a point in the middle of the free throw line. If you don't know why it's called the nail, it used to literally be a nail where they would measure out all the measurements on the court. But it still remains called the nail. But basically that free throw line area, the elbows, somewhere in there. We were talking about it pregame with Billy Donovan. He was talking about how the Celtics do a great job crashing to the elbow area. The long rebounds tend to go there. Last year, the Celtics had kind of tape marks at the practice facility with lines to that area, kind of showing people the path, the players the path to take to offensive rebound. This is something new for Simons that he's learning and he's kind of getting a grasp of. So to see him getting in there and getting offensive rebounds, you're like, okay, he's starting to understand. This is how we crash. This is where we crash to. It's not just corner crash, driving down, you know, diving through the baseline and trying to get in and sneak in for offensive rebounds. You got guys shooting. The Celtics take an overwhelming majority of their shots from above the break, which means rebounds tend to go long. So if the shot goes long, it's going to bounce all the way out to that free throw line. When you're a rebounder, you think shots are generally going to go long. So you think about the angle. If someone's shooting a 45 degrees from the hoop, you got to go 45 degrees the other way, kind of get to that spot, and you're going to generally get yourself a little bit more in position to rebound. So you always assume a shot's going to go long. And even if it goes short and it front rims, you're kind of getting the same kind of bounce on these long shots, the long 3-pointers. So it gets hammered home on somebody like Simons. Don't just run back. Get to that spot. And the beauty of that is when you get to that spot and the rebound's not there, you just keep on running and you end up getting back on defense anyway. So the Celtics' philosophy of offensive rebounding really pays off. And for Simons to pick that up, very encouraging. Also, for Simons to get hot off the bench continues to be encouraging. I continue to believe that the Celtics, one very viable result for Anfernee Simons and the Celtics this year is that he stays at the deadline. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. Trae Young is officially working with the Hawks to work a trade out of Atlanta. So that means he's probably gone by the deadline. This is not going to be the time for me to take my Trae Young sucks victory lap, but that's coming soon. Again, I mean, it's a regular thing for me. But anyway, you don't know if, like, anytime a guy like Trae Young's going to get traded with all of his salary, teams will look to Boston and Anfernee Simons to see if the Celtics can use that contract to facilitate a deal. All right, but if they don't have to do that. And if they can't get anybody good in return, they won't do that. Simons sticking around, negotiating an actual contract with the Celtics. If you miss my podcast with Keith Smith of Spot Track, there was a bonus podcast that was released more recently audio-wise, but it's back on the YouTube page from a few weeks ago. It makes perfect sense to me to sign him to a mid-level deal. You can still trade him. Teams can now absorb players in mid-level using their mid-level exception. So there's still a possibility that Simons could get traded down the road. You're not stuck in case something better comes along or a better fit comes along. But keeping Simons in a 6-man role at a mid-level deal into next season with Jaylen and Jayson, and who knows where, however else they remake the roster, makes sense. You get a big scoring punch. The more comfortable he is, the more comfortable he gets, the more performances he puts out like this off the bench, the more that makes a whole lot of sense for the Celtics. Keep this type of explosive scorer on the bench and move forward and see, right? So I think there's a game like this for Simons, mixed into how crappy this game was, is a lot of encouraging stuff where you say, okay, he's still more comfortable. He's getting there. He's figuring it out off the bench. He's figuring out the philosophical stuff. He's defending at a higher level. He's picking things up. And maybe, look, it's only early January. This is the January 6th episode. You had to give him some time to pick some of this stuff up, especially for a guy who never had to be any kind of defender or any kind of rebounder. So this is about the time. This makes sense. It's about right for him to start figuring this stuff out and showing it. So that was good. All right. So now the Celtics have won. The Knicks have lost. The Celtics are in second in the East. What does that actually mean? We'll talk about that when I come back. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in this building. Okay. Now, the energy wasn't right there at the beginning, but it did show up at the end. The crowd, when there's that big run that gets everybody on their feet, it is actually kind of fun. And fans, you want to be here for these moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time gives you the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets. It's fast, simple, and no guesswork, because browsing the Game Time app is straightforward. It's intuitive. You find tickets in just a few taps. You see the view from your seat before buying. It makes choosing tickets easy and confident. I've used the Game Time app plenty. I like using it on the road sometimes. We're in cities where other sporting events are going on, a hockey game, a baseball game, a WNBA game, whatever. So I've seen it. I've used it. The view from your seat thing is great. The fees are all up front, so I know what I'm paying right ahead of time. There are zone deals that help you unlock great seats at an even better value. So whatever it is, a game, another event, a concert, or whatever, it's all right there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKED, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA, Locked On NBA Game Night, 2 podcasts on one feed. Game Night is 7 days a week, covering every game in the league. So you want to get caught up on everything that happened after watching the Celtics game, that's your podcast. And then in the afternoons, Locked On NBA has you covered with all the big storylines, lots of Trae Young discussion going on there on the next podcast for sure. So go check that out wherever you found this podcast, whether you're watching or listening. So the Celtics are now the 2 seed. They have jumped past the Knicks. And does it matter? Does it matter right now on January 6th? No, not necessarily. We asked Payton Pritchard about it after the game. He's like, look, have we even played 40 games? The answer is no. They're at 35 games at this point. So no, you haven't even gotten through halfway through the season. There's way too much basketball left to be played. So we can't sit there and say, oh, wow, this is very, very meaningful. However, look, I picked the Celtics to win 44 games this year, and they're on a 54 win pace now. So they're a little bit ahead of my prediction. And that's totally fine. I'd rather be wrong that way than wrong the other way. I still think that there's going to be a point here where maybe they lose a few in a row. But what they've done is given themselves a lot of pad. So they're still in really great shape. They've won now 23. They're 23-12. The Knicks are 23-13 after losing to the Pistons. The Celtics are now 3.5 games out of first. And they've got games coming up against the Pistons. So it's it's not inconceivable that the Celtics can kind of make a run at the top seed at some point. Now, that is shocking to say, and I am laughing as I say it because I don't expect it. But look, they got the Nuggets coming up on Wednesday. They don't have Jokic, but they're getting players back, and they're still scrappy. They're still good. The Raptors are always a pain. The Spurs coming in on Saturday on a back-to-back and third game in 4 nights. That's going to be tough. Then you're back on the road. Indy, Miami, Atlanta, Detroit. Winnable games, all of them, except for Detroit. That's going to be a tough one. But there are games here to win. And I don't know. Are they going to make a run at that top seed legitimately? I can't say no for sure because I didn't think they would be here in the 2 seed. Just being here, just having this conversation is a huge win for them. Whether they hit a rough patch or not, this is a team that very few people actually thought. Maybe you had faith, maybe you believed, but rational thought to sit there and be like, this team without Tatum, losing all the players that they lost, to sit there and say they'd be 23-12 and the 2nd seed at this point. Not a lot of people really thought that. I think what this does is it really solidifies their playoff positioning. They have a real chance to be a home court team in the first round, which is nothing that we expected. And look, a lot can happen. We don't know what the Orlando Magic are going to be. The Philadelphia 76ers are still being talked about in glowing terms around the league because they have potential, and we don't know what they're going to end up being. But I just want to give the Celtics the credit for becoming this and coming together so soon. And I just talked all that bit about Anfernee Simons getting it together. But you look at guys, the fringe guys, the Jordan Walshes, who has slipped out of the starting lineup, but still comes in and makes some positive impact. Baylor Shireman finds a way to make an impact. Hugo Gonzalez finds a way to make an impact. And if it doesn't happen every game, it doesn't. That's fine. But they are not discouraged. This team doesn't get discouraged by a slow start, 0-3 start. They don't get discouraged by a bad performance, a bad quarter, bad half, maybe a bad game. They just keep coming back and keep pushing. And no matter where this season ends up going, I think this is something that we're going to look at this as a really huge success. And as I said in yesterday's show, I don't know what to make of what this team will be in the playoffs, because I don't think they have the variety of things that they can do to lean on, in a playoff series, where I think the reason why playoffs kind of weed out some teams is you have 7 games to game plan and come up with, A, B, C, D. And I don't know if the Celtics will have A, B, C, D, but a lot of people didn't think they would have A, and they have A and B now. And so can they get to the other things? Do they have the personnel? Do they have the talent? Do they have that? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. But however it goes, whatever it is, this is already a major success, because we've seen the coaching has gotten these guys to an incredible level. We've seen Jaylen, so what? He had a bad game. This just goes down as a bad game, but he still did the other things. And the one thing I'll say about Jaylen in this game, and this kind of goes to my point that I'm making here, at no point did I think Jaylen was trying to dominate this game. He took 24 shots and he was pressing a little bit, but I never thought okay, Jaylen feels the need to take over. He had little stretches, but he never said, it's my time, I have to find my offense at the expense of everything else. No, he just played his normal game. Shots didn't fall. He never really let it get to him. And I thought that's as meaningful as some of the things he did in the 50-point game, because it's not just about how many times does the ball go through the hoop. It is your process. And the Celtics process has been great. So the 2nd seed at this point, it's not I'm not just looking at it like, hey, great, they're in second. It's more what it symbolizes. It's more that it symbolizes these guys are they've been together. They've never let any of the negativity, any negative stretches get to them. They've never let individually, they've never let starting, not starting, losing a starting job, interfere with anything. Their attitudes are all still the same. They're all still together. And the result is right now, positive wins. You're seeing tangible results, which is important. So I don't know. This is predicting this team at this point, hard to say. They could win 54 games. They could end up hitting a skid and being a 45-win team. Don't know. Don't care. I don't care. I just don't care. I'm already happy with, to me, this season is already a success. And it's proven a lot. A lot of people who had doubts about certain players, the coach, all of that, it's already all of that stuff has been answered to me. So everything that happens from now on is just fun, gravy, enjoy it. Big playoff run, no playoff run, who cares? Because I think they are in a great place to carry this into next season, where next season is the season to care about. So, but let me know what you think, what you take from this game, obviously in the comments section. Share your thoughts with me. Always love to hear them. Even if you disagree with me, I still love to hear them. So do that. I would love to hear your opinion. I'd love to have you share the podcast as well. Please spread the word. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.